Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Can we shut that for except for 6 inches or so? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 27th day of October 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We're beginning chapter 3 on page 139. It's entitled Karma Yoga. Yeah, he had the right page. Yeah, just turn one page. Text number 1. Jayasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Ghore Mam Diyodi Yasikeshava. Arjuna Vacha Jayasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Ghore Mam Niyodi Yasikeshava. Arjuna Vacha Jayasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Ghore Mam Niyodi Yasikeshava. Hear it. Arjuna Vacha Jayasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Ghore Mam Niyodi Yasikeshava. Arjuna Vacha Jayasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Ghore Mam Niyodi Yasikeshava. Arjuna Vacha Jayasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Ghore Mam Niyodi Yasikeshava. Arjuna Vacha Jayasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Ghore Mam Niyodi Yasikeshava. Bhakt Ed. Arjuna Vacha Jayasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Ghore Mam Niyodi Yasikeshava. Arjuna Uvacha. Arjuna said, Jayasi, better, Chet, if, Karmanaha, then fruit of action, te, by you, Mata, is considered. Buddhi, intelligence, Janardan, O Krishna, tat, therefore, Kim, why, Karmani, in action, Gore, ghastly, Mam, me, Niyodiyasi, you are engaging, Keshava, O Krishna. Translation. Arjuna said, O Janardan, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruit of work. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, has very elaborately described the constitution of the soul in the previous chapter, with a view to delivering his intimate friend Arjuna from the ocean of material grief. And the path of realization has been recommended, Buddhi Yoga, or Krishna consciousness. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia, and one with such a misunderstanding often withdraws to a secluded place to become fully Krishna conscious by chanting the holy name of Lord Krishna. But without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in a secluded place, where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness, or Buddhi Yoga, or intelligence in spiritual advancement of knowledge, as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. But as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to the best course of action. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained Karma Yoga, or work in Krishna consciousness, in this third chapter. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So you can see how there could be some confusion here, because there was, especially that last verse, you talk about Brahma Nirvana, you don't get the idea of fighting on a battlefield, right? That was the last verse. Esha Brahmi Stiti Parta Nainam Prabhavamuyati Stitbas Yamandakaripi Brahma Nirvana Michati. That is the way of spiritual godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. So the emphasis was on this Buddhi Yoga, which is the intelligence. Of course, Buddhi means intelligence. And remember, we had that whole section about the fixed consciousness. And it was mostly involving your attitude, how you can be tolerant in happiness and distress, and these dualities. And so Arjuna is clearing up our possible confusion, that Krishna is recommending that you just attain this state where your intelligence and consciousness is linked to Krishna, and that's it. Nirvana. Nirvana means finished, as Prabhupada said. Finished. Brahma Nirvana means just Om, So, but that's not what Krishna is wanting him to do. So he poses this question: if you think that Buddhi, Mata Buddhi, is better than work, Karmana, why you want me to work, Karmani? Why do you want me to engage in this horrible warfare? It seems contradictory. And he asks a similar question in the beginning of chapter 5. So now that keys off the whole chapter in Karma Yoga, and Krishna will very much emphasize activity, pious activity versus sinful activity, and transcendental activity, and then there's a wonderful section at the end on what impels us to do activity that we know is bad for us. Of course, it's Kama, and that's a very enlightening section. I always liked that section, memorized it when I first encountered it. Okay, let's see what Krishna, he goes on in the second verse here, and he says he's bewildered by the seemingly contradictory instructions. Vyamashreneva vakyena buddhi mohyasiva me tadekam badanishchitya yena shreyo hamapnuyam. My intelligence is bewildered by equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial for me. Don't forget, here's that word Shreya again. Remember, this is what he wanted. That was in that verse where he surrendered. Yakshreya yakshyanishchitam buhitanmai. Please tell me for sure how I can achieve the ultimate good. Very important concept. Purport: in the previous chapter, as a prelude to the Bhagavad Gita, many different paths were explained, such as Sankhya Yoga, buddhi yoga, control of the senses by the intelligence, work without fruit of desire, and the position of the neophyte. This was all presented unsystematically. A more organized outline of the path would be necessary for action and understanding. Arjuna therefore wanted to clear up these apparently confusing matters so that any common man could accept them without misinterpretation. Although Krishna had no intention of confusing Arjuna by any jugglery of words, Arjuna could not follow the process of Krishna consciousness, either by inertia or by active service. In other words, by his questions, he is clearing the path of Krishna consciousness for all students who seriously want to understand the mystery of the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, let's see what Krishna says. Shri Bhagavana Vacha Lokesmin Vibindha Nishta Tora Prokta Mayanaga Jnana Yogena Sankyanam Karma Yogena Yoginam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service. Purport. In the second chapter, verse 39, the Lord explained two kinds of procedures, namely Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga, or Buddhi Yoga. In this verse, the Lord explains the same more clearly. Sankhya Yoga, or the analytical study of the nature of spirit and matter, is the subject matter for persons who are inclined to speculate and understand things by experimental knowledge and philosophy. The other class of men work in Krishna consciousness, as it is explained in the 61st verse of the second chapter. That's the one I mentioned where Krishna first mentions himself as the object of devotion. Tani savani sangyukta asita matpara vashihi yasindunani tasya pragya pratishtita. This pragya pratishtita, because there's so much emphasis on pragya with intelligence that it seems to be, stasis. But here Krishna is saying all those senses, Tani refers back to the senses. Sangamya has to be controlled by engaging in relation to me, matparaha. And all those indriyani, tasya pragya, but then if you have them all controlled in that way, your intelligence is fixed. That's what he said. So Prabhupada refers to that. The Lord has explained also in the 39th verse that by working by the principles of Buddhi Yoga or Krishna consciousness, one can be relieved from the bonds of action. And furthermore, there is no flaw in the process. Let's look what that 39th verse is. I don't recall exactly what that is. Okay, so that is... No. Oh, here. Esha Dravida Sankhya Buddhi Yoga Tamam Shinu. So this is where he introduces this phrase Buddhi Yoga, which occurs again back in the 10th chapter, and is kind of probably gives it kind of an equivalent for Bhakti Yoga. So up till now I've spoken of Sankhya. Now this chapter in most Gitas is called Sankhya Yoga, chapter 2, that we just finished, because it involves so much of understanding the spirit as opposed to matter, separating this idea that you are not the body. There's 20 verses on the soul. So that's kind of what Sankhya does. It analyzes matter and spirit and tries to see which is which. So now I'm going to talk about Buddhi Yoga. So this is where the Buddhi Yoga comes in. So Prabhupada refers to that. By working the principle of Buddhi Yoga, Krishna consciousness, one can relieve from the bonds of action. And furthermore, there's no flaw in this process. The same principle is more clearly explained in the 61st verse, that this Buddhi Yoga is to depend entirely on the Supreme, or more specifically on Krishna. Matparaha. And in this way, all the senses can be brought under control very easily. Therefore, both the yogas are interdependent as religion and philosophy. Now here's one of the most famous lines Prabhupada writes in all of his books. Religion without philosophy is sentiment or sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So because practically everyone he preached to when he first came to America was experienced with both of those. In those days, vast majority of people grew up in a house with some religion, mostly Catholic or Christian religion, but it wasn't satisfying. That's why they were open to Krishna consciousness. But they had that, but it seemed more, now he said, but there wasn't much philosophy, You try to ask, well, how did God create the world? 6 days it happened. That's not satisfying to the entire. But you read the third canto of Kapila Muni, and you get this wonderful description of how the false ego, which you only get when you rebel against Krishna. In the spiritual world, there's real ego. So the false ego is the interface really between the soul and the material world. And that false ego in all different modes of nature gradually produces the gross and subtle matters which construct this body and this whole world. It's a fascinating description. And then the whole thing, we have the picture in the corner with Mahavishnu and the creation. It's a intellectually satisfying. But so religion without philosophy is sentiment, or sometimes fanaticism, and philosophy without religion, which we have in spades in the West. So much this philosopher, that philosopher. I study so many of them, and it definitely gets you thinking. And there's usually a kernel of truth in it somewhere. But it's not complete, and it just bewilders your mind. There's no end point to it, and you certainly don't know what you're supposed to do. Because it could be right, could be not. Maybe it's like this, maybe not. We have to, there's all this doubt. So this sentence is very memorable. Religion without philosophy is sentiment, or sometimes fanaticism. While philosophy without religion is mental speculation. The ultimate goal is Krishna, because the philosophers who are also sincerely searching after the absolute truth come in the end to Krishna consciousness. This is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita. I think he's referring to 15:15. Vedaishta sarvahame vedanta krit veda vedeva cham. All the Vedas are meant for understanding me. The whole process is to understand the real position of the self in relation to the super self. The indirect process is philosophical speculation, by which gradually one may come to the point of Krishna consciousness. And the other process is directly connecting everything with Krishna in Krishna consciousness. Of these two, the path of Krishna consciousness is better because it does not depend on purifying the senses by a philosophical process. Krishna consciousness is itself the purifying process, and by the direct method of devotional service, it is simultaneously easy and sublime. So this is, this is how the movement was started and how it grows, and it's why it's feasible for us to practice it. I mean, the vast majority of people, let's face it, in the West, even in the East, everywhere, they're not very disciplined. That's one of the characteristics of the age. You don't live very long, and even if you happen to be interested in some spiritual matters, chances are very high you'll be misguided, by some cheaters. You go to the bookstore, you go to the library, and there's a million different books, and everybody's got his philosophy. There's no guidance, and therefore. Prabhupada talks about that in the purport to the 10th verse of the 4th chapter. Vita raga bhaya krodha manmaya mamupashata bhavo jnana tapasa bhuta manbhavanagata. Krishna is saying there that those who have given up attachment, fear, and anger. This phrase Vita raga bhaya krodha appears several times in the Gita. Manmaya mamupashata, and is surrendered to me, and taking shelter of me. Many souls in the past have become purified by tapasya, in the process, and they've attained pure love for me. So in that purport, Prabhupada analyzes those three things: raga, bhaya, and krodha. Material attachment, fear of having a material body again, this is the Maya bodies, and then krodha, anger, after frustration. And what Prabhupada explains, that you go from this philosophy to that philosophy, you have some faith, you pursue it, then you're cheated, and after I said, it's all false, and it's a kind of an anger and a disappointment and pessimism about anything. And he compares that to the nihilistic Buddhist sects sometimes, that the ultimate result of everything is just void. We don't really exist. Personality doesn't really exist. And they say Mayavad is like covered Buddhism, because it also says there's something out there, but it has no details. That's the nirvishesha shunyavadi Prabhupada is saving us from. Nirvishesha means, yes, you're suffering because of your physical body and your involvement with the senses and all of these activities. That much they get right, But the solution is the famous throwing the baby out with the bathwater. The Mayavadis are afraid, bhaya, of having a body again, a spiritual body, because all they know of a body is a material body, and it's clear the material body is a source of misery. So they deny that all these details that we have about Krishna and his form and his activities and all these things, this is all Maya. That's why they're called Mayavadis. It's actually a very destructive philosophy even to hear. Lord Chaitanya said, don't hear it, you'll be destroyed. Mayavadi Bhasha Sunali Sarvanash, because it sounds very enticing. You're the absolute, I'm Brahman, But it's never satisfying the soul. And there's so many wonderful pastimes in, let's say, Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord Chaitanya converts the Mayavadis. I was reading recently chapter 25 of the Madhya Lila. This is after the instructions of Sanatan. But Lord Chaitanya is in Benares, and it describes in more detail what you read in chapter 7 of the Adi Lila, how he converts the Prakashananda and his thousands of followers, and they were deriding him because he was a sentimentalist. Maybe you don't know that Lord Chaitanya was initiated in sannyasi, the only sannyasi who were Mayavadis. So Keshava Bharati, he was coming in that line and he initiated him. That's why Lord Chaitanya, he didn't really have a Sikha, at least at first. He was Mayavad, So they saw him dancing in the streets, all these thousands of Prakashanandas, thousands of disciples, very powerful intellect, Mayavad. Oh, he's sentimentalist. He's one of us, but instead of studying Vedanta, he's dancing in the street. There was all of this. So Lord Chaitanya was ready to just avoid them, but their blasphemy was, painting his devotees there. He had some devotees that were living there. So he agreed when he was invited to meet with them. And he went to the house of this Brahmin, and then he took a very humble role. His strategy was, he washed his feet, whether everyone washes their feet, and then he sat down there. You sit down, it's an impure place, But he was taking a humble role. And so they were saying, oh, come, and then he showed his effulgence. They were very, very impressed by effulgence. They immediately think, oh, he's Narayan. And they were right. This time they were right. But when they call each other Narayan, that's... So anyway, he very, very skillfully got their attention and their respect. And that was to their own benefit. And eventually, he explained the Brahma Sutras, the Vedanta Sutra to them, and they were, that's actually the truth. And they gave up their allegiance to Shankaracharya's. So this chapter 25 in the Madhya Lila, there's a whole speech there by one of the Mayavadis before Prakashananda also speaks, and he's just deriding the Sharika Bhashya and saying, we're misguided all this time. Hare Krishna, Kali Yuga strikes again. And why don't we just say Om? Usually they make one pass. Oh, this is like a whole. Jeez. Hare Krishna. They want to disturb. The whole thing is to make the disturbance, right? They themselves are riding around with noise canceling headphones, and the helmets, and they're aggravating everybody. Hare Krishna. So back to Prakashananda Saraswati, and his one of his main sannyasis there gives a whole speech, a whole explanation, just glorifying Lord Chaitanya. This is the real understanding of the Vedanta Sutras. It was perfect and everything. So Lord Chaitanya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he perfectly presented bhakti for the audience that's there. Very philosophically. He's Nimai Pandit. He's Krishna. So he had all the arguments, and he knew the philosophy. The Shastra, of course. So that's the resolution of it. But this verse that we're first reading here, Lokesmin Vidha. So actually, we didn't finish the purport. Let me finish it. Religion without philosophy is sentiment or sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. The ultimate goal is Krishna, because the philosophers who are also sincerely searching after the absolute truth come in the end to Krishna consciousness. This is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita. The whole process is to understand the real position of the self in relation to the super self. The indirect process is philosophical speculation, by which gradually one may come to the point of Krishna consciousness. The other process is directly connecting everything with Krishna in Krishna consciousness. Of these two, the path of Krishna consciousness is better because it does not depend on purifying the senses by philosophical process. Krishna consciousness is itself the purifying process, and by the direct method of devotional service, it is simultaneously easy and sublime. Yes, we did finish that. So, how is it easy and sublime? Well, anyone can begin. There's no prerequisite. To become a Mayavadi, you got to be a sannyasi. Forget about women; they don't even want to see them. But even if you're just an ordinary householder or Vaishya, forget it. You can't attain liberation. You got to be sannyasi and in total, and you got to study Vedanta Sutra, and that's your discipline. None of us are going to do that. But here, Lord Chaitanya, this is the Mahabodhanyaya. What does Mahabodhanyaya mean? Do you know? You've heard this verse, Namo Mahabodhanyaya. What is it? Most munificent, yeah. Greatly munificent. Vadanya, the word dana means gift, Vadanya. So how is he the most munificent? Prabhu? Mukunda? Yes, because he's giving out prema, the holy grail, of spiritual life. The most valuable thing in existence. Freely. To everybody. Who's willing to, chant and dance and take prasadam. And the wonderful thing is, it's not that, okay, you got to do this, then you can enter into bhakti. No, from day one, you walk through this door, when we're open finally, Sunday night, you don't know anything about anything. Yes, you have to take your shoes off, that's about it. And you have to be, what was those things we have? The crest test. Do you know about the crest test? But you still have to pass the crest test. Crest test is clean, respectful, sane, and sober. Clean, respectful, sane, and sober. And you have to have the minimum of every one of those. You can't have 3 out of 4. So to come to that point, mainly if you're a somewhat civilized person, you can make that. But so then you can begin. You come here. No, the chanting is free. We're not charging any fee to chant Hare Krishna. Prabhupada loves to do it. You go to one of these yoga studios, you have to pay. And if you want a mantra, give me $35. That's your transcendental meditation. In those days, probably now it's $1,000. And and what's the mantra they give you? It's just one of these syllables, right? I'm or something. You can see it's a ripoff from day one, So here's the greatest mantra, the Maha Mantra, which is in the Kali Santana Upanishad, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. You know the rest? Iti, Shodashikam Nam Nam. Who is that guy, anyway? How did he join us? Yes, that's it. So it gives the Hare Krishna mantra, and then the very name of the Upanishad is telling you what this is all about. Kali Santarana, how you can be delivered from the clutches of Kali Yuga. So iti shodashikam nam nam, these 16 names. Kali kalmasha nashanam. You know Sanskrit. What does that mean? Kali kalmasha nashanam. Yeah, it destroys the contamination that's inevitable when just living in the Kali Yuga. Kalmasha nashanam. Nata parataropaya. There is no greater means of counteracting the evils of this age than chanting this mantra. Who knew? So, and Lord Chaitanya said there's no hard and fast rules. Nam namakari bhavata. There's no rules of time, place, circumstance, or candidate. And it's also it's supported in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Kirat hunan the pulin the pukisha. Have you ever heard this one before? Kirat hunan the pulin the pukisha abe the shamba yevana kasharya. This is a whole series of outcasts. None of them are part of the Vedic culture. Prabhupada says, oh, that's the Huns, and those are the Mongolians, and, all over the world, outside of India. Even they, if they take shelter, if someone has taken shelter of Krishna, they become purified and can become poor Brahmins, and Vaishnavas go back to Godhead. So this is Lord Chaitanya's movement, and it's revolutionary, because it means all you have to do is be a human being, and be humble. That's the hard part. You have to come to the point of Arjuna saying, I don't know what's best for me, and I'm going to inquire from the proper source. And Prabhupada worked like anything, really gave his life to set up this society so all over the world, and of course now it's on the internet, but really you can go to a church in many places which wouldn't have had a temple, or anything. And there's devotees practicing, the books are there, the great effort of producing these books, so many languages. And you can practice devotional service. If you're, it's so nice having Vijay here, his story of how he came, he was so ripe, he was so ready. As soon as he read this book, he couldn't put it down. That's, and Keshava Bharati Maharaj had the same experience, that we're reading. And so there are people like that all over the world, And that perfectly unites. See, this is Lord Chaitanya, who perfectly unites the head and the heart. The Mayavadis are all in the head. It's all dry speculation. Aruha Kritrena. If you want to get to the Brahman platform, you have to perform these severe austerities, which no one can perform. It's like you have to stop the senses, and you have to root out all of these subtle desires and go alone somewhere, and it's impossible. You can't eat very well because that's Maya. It's all Maya, so you eat some plain gruel every day. Krishna consciousness practically ran on prasadam and kirtan. Right? That's the movement. So it's perfect. In other words, it really awakens the soul, and by giving you the higher taste, even like the first day, if you accept it, Prabhupada says, you just stay with us for 1 week and you'll feel yourself becoming, purified. And so that, yes, it's difficult, there's certain difficulties, we're so fallen, but it's possible for anyone, anywhere in the world to do it. So this Bhagavad Gita, as he's going to describe, it systematically goes through the different yogas, and each of them actually is part of Bhakti Yoga. It would be Karma Yoga. You work hard and then you give the fruits to Krishna. We're working for Krishna, and so that's certainly there. You're not incurring any sin. In the next chapter, he's going to talk about the need to understand what is karma, what is akarma, and what is vikarma. A karma in this context means action according to your psychophysical nature in varnashram. In other words, within the Vedic paradigm, not sinful activity, but still fruitive, basically. And then vikarma is sinful activity outside of that, which is very dangerous because you can become so sinful you lose the human form of life. But the greatest kind of work is akarma. It doesn't mean no activity. It means activity that doesn't produce any result, any fruit that you want to enjoy, and therefore there's nothing there's no reaction that you're going to get. The reaction is simply purification that brings you closer to Krishna and pure Krishna consciousness. So that's what we're searching for. And to come to the stage of Naishkarmya. Naishkarmya describes the state of someone who's only performing akarma, selfless activity for Krishna. And so that's the ideal work. You're burning off all previous karmas and you're not incurring any new karmas. That's called liberation. It's not our final goal, but it's an important platform to be on, So he'll describe this here, and we're talking about yajna. Yajna is the main theme here, the sacrifice, and that's really how our activities are so purifying, because they're for the Lord of sacrifice, Vishnu, Krishna. All right, let's go on. Simultaneously easy and sublime. The karmanam. All right, let's try that one again. Text number 4, page 142. The karmanam naishkamyam purushoshnate nacha sanyasanareva siddhim samadhigacchati. There's that word naishkarmya I just mentioned. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. Purport. The renounced order of life can be accepted when one has been purified by the discharge of the prescribed form of duties which are laid down just to purify the hearts of materialistic men. Without purification, one cannot attain success by abruptly adopting the fourth order of life, sannyas. According to the empirical philosophers, simply by adopting sannyas or retiring from fruitive activities, one at once becomes as good as Narayan. This is again Mayavad. But Lord Krishna does not approve this principle. Without purification of heart, sannyas is simply a disturbance to the social order. On the other hand, if someone takes to the transcendental service of the Lord, even without discharging his prescribed duties, whatever he may be able to advance in the cause is accepted by the Lord. Buddhi Yoga. Svopamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Does anyone recognize that line from chapter 2? What does it mean? You recognize it, but you can't know what it means. Okay? Protect one from? Mahato Bayat, great fear. It's actually the most fearful danger. Think of it that way, the most fearful danger. Because what danger does is give you fear. And what is that most fearful danger? That you know. Yeah, going down again into the species. You know, we've been doing that so many times. So svopam, suopam, just a little bit protects you from that. How wonderful it is. Even a slight performance of such a principle enables one to overcome great difficulties. So it's not going to work to just stop activity and think, oh, now I won't incur any more karma, because you've got all those latent karmas that are going to push you to work. You have to do something, as Krishna will say in the next verse. You can't do nothing ever, even if you're sitting there. Your mind is working. You're struggling like anything, to ignore that pain in your knee that's coming. You're never not doing anything. And anyway, you have to work just to keep a body and soul together. So the point is not to stop work. The point is to find out from the proper authority how to work, how to act in this world, so that you're not incurring any sin and you're not getting any reaction. And that means, as we learned in the second chapter, to link up all those activities and those thoughts to Krishna, in Krishna consciousness. And that's feasible to do. And that was Prabhupada's whole point. Do something. Sweep the floor, Go out and chant on the street. Collect a few, dollars for BTG. But work for Krishna. And that's really purifies. And then when it comes time to chant, the holy name, which is the basic process, you're chanting with a different consciousness. You're chanting more purely. Your mind isn't racing here and there. You wonder, what am I doing? What do people think of me? You're just chanting Hare Krishna. So it's a very scientific process. The chanting is essential. I mean, I've witnessed so many devotees. You get so busy. There's so many duties, so many things that part becomes less and less. Said, oh, there's a kirtan going on. Now's a chance for me to do something else, to catch up on this. No, do not minimize the importance of just coming together and forgetting everything else and doing that service for Krishna, of chanting His holy name with full heart and listening and hearing and dancing. That's the engine. Otherwise, the biggest devotees I've seen, they get so busy, management and this and that. I go, oh, somebody. Now I really have responsibilities. But the heart isn't completely pure. And you let, labha, what is it? Labha puja pratishta. Profit, adoration, distinction. That's profit, distinction. Comes in. So I've always been fortunate to be able to have, have morning program and have the kirtans and Harinam, and I really, that's Prabhupada's program. I remember there's one letter he wrote in the early days. We actually had our own press, physical press, which is at Tiffany Place, which is in Brooklyn, where I joined. I remember seeing it. And, there were only a couple of guys who joined who even who were skilled enough to learn how to operate the press. And I remember one of them, I forget his name now. And he wrote a letter to Prabhupada. He said, because, printing our own books, Prabhupada was so happy to see if we could do that, And so this devotee was in charge of that. And he said, Prabhupada, I'm so busy, I don't have time to sit for class and do all these things, and I'm worried, the morning. So, well, look, okay, you have, but you have to chant your rounds, follow the principles, and you have to go on Sankirtan every day, which meant Harinam. That was the importance of it, So it's that makes the process feasible for us. Okay, if there are any comments or questions, raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll go on. Okay, yes, Ru. Oh, here we got a mic. We got two of them. B is best. Turn it on.
I was appreciating or easily relating to this point which Prabhupada...
You can take your mask off because...
yes. Yeah, so about this point that the devotional service is simultaneously easy and sublime. Right? I come from South India, so many people think that, taking to God consciousness has to be very complicated, that they cannot understand. And they find it very difficult to accept that it's a very simple process. Chant Hare Krishna and see if it works.
Yeah.
For them, it doesn't suit their brain, like the Mayavadis which you were mentioning in the Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know how to, I'm just thinking that here Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us such a simple process, and they think too much and they overcomplicate.
Yes, it's definitely possible to overthink. If the chanting Hare Krishna, I mean, it's said. There's a wonderful verse by Devahuti when she's receiving instructions from her exalted son, whose name is Kapiladev, and she says, "Aho bata shrapacho to ghariyan yajjigbhagre vartate namatubhyam te pustapaste juhavu sasnaraya brahmanujo namagunantiyete." You familiar with this verse? She says how wonderful it is that aho bata shrapacho. This is kind of an idiomatic. Even the dog eaters. Someone may be a dog eater, but how wonderful it is that if your name, he's speaking to her son, and she knows it's Krishna, is vibrating on the tip of their tongue. That's it. You see that. Jigvagre, tip of the tongue. Vartate namatubhyam, your name is being vibrated. Then that person in the previous life or lives must have studied all the Vedas, performed great austerities, visited all the holy places, bathed in the rivers. In other words, you don't know who they really are. To have the inspiration to surrender and to perform menial service and to chant, especially to chant seriously, chanting all the time, And this was Lord Chaitanya's movement. That's why he exalted Haridas Thakur, who was born as a Muslim, outside. But he was a great devotee. He was Namacharya. And so to have that inspiration and not to be think that, if we're talking about God, then I've got to read the Vedas, and I have to be born in a certain family, so I'll pray for that next part. But right now, I really can't do much. No, right now, at this point, you can do everything by just having faith in the process that's been given. It's simple. So it is simple and sublime. There's so much philosophy. There's no question about it. But certainly at the beginning, you don't have to worry about that. Take the steps that are being given, if you're chanting, and the regular principles. Those are the two basic things, to have that determination. And one gives you the strength for the other. If you seriously chant and pray, you'll get the spiritual strength to follow, especially if you're in the association of devotees. And those two things alone, seriously chanting japa and kirtan and following those principles, will give you tremendous impetus to go further, learn the philosophy, and become revere the deities and so many things. So that's why as Prabhupada said, you're entering the house of bhakti. It's easy for the neophytes who are entering the house, and it's very exalted and fully varied for those who are more advanced. I mean, there's so many things to understand and perfect internally and externally. There's a whole internal realm that we're meant to cultivate in Krishna consciousness. There's no lack of philosophy and understanding and austerity, but it's a very expansive, because it's Krishna. He wants us to come home. If you want something on your own, how can I get this city? How can I go to that planet? How can I become the Ryan? he's not going to make that easy for you. That's going to be impossible. And that's what it is. It is impossible. It's a complete self-delusion. So, we're very fortunate to be part of this discipline and this movement. Oh, let's read one or two more. So the verse 5, you can't do anything even for a moment. You can't do nothing even for a moment. Nahi kashchit chanamapi jatutishchati karma krit karite yavashak karma sarvak prakati jaya gunai. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. Purport. It is not a question of embodied life, but it is the nature of the soul to be always active. Without the presence of the spirit soul, the material body cannot move. The body is only a dead vehicle to be worked by the spirit soul, which is always active and cannot stop even for a moment. As such, the spirit soul has to be engaged in the good work of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, it will be engaged in occupations dictated by the illusory energy. In contact with material energy, the spirit soul acquires material modes, and to purify the soul from such affinities, it is necessary to engage in the prescribed duties enjoined in the Shastras. But if the soul is engaged in his natural function of Krishna consciousness, whatever he is able to do is good for him. The Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.17 affirms this, Prabhupada's the favorite verse of Prabhupada's. I'll say, you say, you have old books. Chakva swadharmam chananam bojang harer bhajan napakvo tapate tato yadi yatra kvava bhadrama bhura mushyakim kovarta apto abhajatam swadharmataha. If someone takes to Krishna consciousness, even though he may not follow the prescribed duties in the Shastras or execute the devotional service properly, and even though he may fall down from the standard, there's no loss or evil for him. But if he carries out all the injunctions for purification in the Shastras, what does it avail him if he is not Krishna conscious? So the purificatory process is necessary for reaching this point of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, sannyas, or any purificatory process, is to help reach the ultimate goal of becoming Krishna conscious, without which everything is considered a failure. Okay, so we'll resume there tomorrow. I want to leave a little time, since I brought my device, and so we'll have one or two poems. I even picked one out, but I forgot what it was. What was it? Oh, yeah. This is a verse. I think we heard this with one of the quotes in the morning recently. This is the next verse to learn. Okay? Marura mararam. Marura marametam. Unless you know it already. Marura marametam mangalam mangalanam. Sakala nigamavalli satpalam chitswarupam. Sakadabipadighitam shraddhaya heliyava. Bhagavadanadamatram tariyet Krishna nama. Of sweet things, it's the sweetest you will taste at any time. Of things that bring good fortune, it's the perfect paradigm. Of all the Vedic teachings, it's the transcendental fruit, the very form of spirit, unalloyed and absolute. When spoken, not chanted. You can't chant something once. Did I tell you that? Chanting means repeating. When spoken even once with faith, or spoken once with none, from birth and death it surely will deliver anyone. And in the end it gives pure love for Krishna, life's true aim. So cast away all doubts and chant Shri Krishna's holy name. Famous verse from the Hari Bhakti Vilas. And what else was I going to read to you? Okay. That one you know. Alright, I'll read you one of these verses. These are called the Tribhangi Chanda Stava prayer. Now the Tribhangi means threefold bending. And these verses, each line has kind of a threefold division. You'll hear it. Yamalaj and abundant. Now these are all direct objects or adjectives, and they go on for 5 long verses, and then at the end you find the subject and the verb. It's interesting the way this thing is constructed. That's why you can put them all together like this. Yamalaj and abundant amashatadandana mahiganjana ganalasa badam pasupala padandanam abasatakandatamati sundadamadavinakaram. Vardagobhavadujana Vidachitapujana Mudukujana Namavenu Dadam Smadanam Evachakshana Makalabalakshana Tanalakshana Matidakshatalam, which means, you broke the two Yamalajun trees, you love to delight your pure devotees, you crushed the pride of the Kali snake with your prancing dance in the Yamuna lake. You're the coward's prince and their life and soul. To serve you with love is their only goal. In the caves you meet the gopis fair and enjoy sweet loving pastimes there. You're dashing, clever, and most debonair. Your lotus hands give blessings rare. To worship you again and again is the way of the wives of the coward men. When the gopis hear the flute you hold, their passion grows 1,000-fold. In your transcendental form we find astounding traits of every kind. Of amorous joking you're the king. Indeed you're skilled at everything. And that's the end of the first verse. So there's 5 verses like that. You can all memorize them. And then the last verse, the whole climax is Vandemehi Van. This is like a tour de force. Vandemehi Vandita Nanda Mamanda the Kulamanda the Kulakangsa Matim Tram Hada Moda the Hada the Soda the Hadano the Namanabadda team. Which means I bow to you who yourself bow down to Nanda the king of the cowards town. In an eminent family you took your birth, you killed King Kamsa, scourge of the earth. O Lord, please let me always please those dear to you, your pure devotees. O Krishna, the one boon I entreat, eternal love for your lotus feet. And on that note, oh, but wait a minute. Everybody dies. It's right here. Everybody dies. Nobody dies. Wake up, and open your eyes. You're not that body, you're a pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. We've got to make a t-shirt out of that. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.